Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? Welcome to the third show of the week as we approach your fantasy drafts this weekend. My name is Morgan Colby.
Yeah.
I got Rick Lemon with me as always. Poppin' Rick.
What's up?
You got any other drafts besides the home league this weekend?
No.
I have
It's
two.
the only redraft league I'm in, so.
Oh, whoa. I have two.
Yeah. I was in one last year, but I left as it was a standard league, and I'm like, what are we doing here?
He's like, I don't want nothing to do that.
So, yeah, I'm only in one
Yep.
redraft league. The rest of my leagues are Dynasty. It's kind of
maybe.
sad, but
Yeah.
kind of cool at the same time.
I
I have been doing, this is probably the most best ball I've ever done.
You are like crashing the best ball.
Yeah.
I did just join another league. $30 buy-in. We'll see how it goes.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Yeah.
But you should do some best ball, dude.
I know I should.
Drop a couple bucks.
Should. And hey, that'll get me prepped for
Exactly.
Okay.
Although the AEP is totally different.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. Well, anyway, welcome on into the podcast. We're glad you're here. We are getting prepared, as we said, for some drafts this weekend, getting you prepared for some drafts this weekend. And we got a show for you today, and we want you to let your league mates, like all the people in your league beside yourself, draft these 5 players. So these are 5 guys that we are staying away from, that we are avoiding in drafts, and that we're not targeting. If they happen to have solid ADPs later in the draft, then we're like, well, maybe. But that their ADP, we're not drafting them. So we'll chat about that in a second. Before we do, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and like us on Facebook. You can find us on the FF Champs, Fantasy Champions. Just type our name and you'll find us on all social media platforms. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, please leave a review. Share this pod with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and like and comment down below. My brain just kind of turned off on Apple Podcasts and I just stopped. It was like Apple Pod. But anyway, let's talk about some players we're avoiding. Like I said, let your league mates draft these 5 players because they're scaring me a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
All right, let's start with the number 1 guy, Davante Adams. Ooh, Davante.
Yeah.
Oh, Davante, how I loved you over the years. Right now, he's going in the 2nd round in most drafts. Sometimes he slips into the 3rd.
He's wide receiver 10 on Sleeper.
He's wide receiver 10 on Sleeper. I just want to check to see where Fantasy Pros got this guy ranked. He is currently ranked at... Where are you, Davante Adams?
Probably 12-ish, 13.
Yeah, I was going to say, but he's just gone. He's just gone. He's not even here. Here you go, 10. Okay.
Oh, he's 10. Okay.
Yeah, so he's 10. He's in tier 2 of wide receivers. Couple of things for me that I'll start with, and Rick can share his thoughts on these things as well. But the quarterback sucks.
You don't like Gardner Minshew?
No, I like Gardner. He's fun and exciting, but like it doesn't usually work out for fantasy assets. I'll say that much. The other thing is the fact that he's on a terrible football team that is clearly tanking for a quarterback. His quarterback is Gardner Minshew, and it's not going to lead to a lot of he'll get opportunities, but he's not going to get scoring opportunities. So that already decreases his upside. And he's 31 years old. He's an old man. And for me, guys on bad teams that are 31, especially
that's a hard
receiver,
recipe to get behind.
It's a hard recipe to get behind. And especially when you're talking about drafting him in the first 2 rounds of your draft, there's a lot of younger, more talented players on better offenses that I would take than Davante Adams. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are essentially looking at Davante Adams going, oh, well, this guy did so much over the course of his career and he was so good that want to get him on their teams. And to me, it's like, I understand the nostalgia of Davante Adams, but I'm not out here drafting Todd Gurley. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Not that that's even close to what's happening to Devontae Adams. He still puts up fantasy points while Todd Gurley's at home. But, you can't live in the past in fantasy football. You always have to look towards the future. And for me,
Projecting next season.
yeah, and projecting the following season. And I think Adams is on the last legs of his career, and sure, he could have a really good year this year again, but I think the odds are better off that he could have an injury-riddled season that leads to him not having a lot of success. And this doesn't necessarily have to do with injury, but more or less that when it hits you, when the age hits you, it hits you hard. And that could happen for Devontae Adams. You remember Julio?
Yeah.
Went from being really good one season to just disappearing the next. So
I think it was around that age.
yeah.
Like 31, 32.
Yeah.
Was when he kind of hit the wall.
Yep. So, I mean, to me, Adams has got to be on this list. And if he was, where for you, Rick, where would be, all right, I'll draft Devontae Adams. Like, where in the draft would that be?
I actually have done it in a couple best ball drafts, but it's usually when he's like wide receiver, like 18. Like that, he has fallen a little bit in some, and then I'm like, okay, I'll get a share of Adams here, and so it's all right. But at wide receiver 10 to me, and especially second round, 17th overall in sleeper, it's just too high, man. And I think we've come. It's pretty simple with Adams, right? Last year he was wide receiver 10. He played the entire season and was wide receiver 10, and that's where he's getting ranked. And I think if Adams has best case scenario for him is doing what he did last year, which is wide receiver 10, which is where he's going to draft. That's best case scenario. We don't usually like to draft guys at their best case scenario. That's not like a great strategy to have.
Yeah.
And there is a chance that Adams is, wide receiver 11, wide receiver 12, and he's going to be worth the pick, and that'll be fine, which is why I don't mind him taking, at the wide receiver 17, 18, and kind of a little further down boards. But there's also a chance that this is the year that he drops off, which I think is going to happen sooner than later. And I'm not saying it will happen, but like you said, when the wall hits, it hits.
It hits.
And I'd rather be a year too early than a year too late. Shout out Bill Belichick. On guys. So it's pretty simple to me. I don't think Adams really has a ceiling. That's kind of the big issue too.
Yeah.
With his age and situation and just the way he played. He played good last year. He was a good receiver. He played every single game. He had big moments, and he finishes wide receiver 10. And that's what you're hoping for when you draft him.
Yeah.
Where there's other guys around him that you're hoping for, I think you have higher aspirations than that. So I would not draft him at pick 17. I don't think I would really even draft him in the second round. In the third round, though, we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
But it also depends on who's there, because there's still receivers that are further down the board that I would draft over him. So
I'd love to talk to Adam Hutchison about the maybe somebody can add him on Twitter, asking what the age cliff is for wide receivers.
I'm pretty sure it's like 31.
Yeah, I was going to say
31 or 32. It's
31 to
it's like
33
right
is like the age cliff, where it's like somewhere in that vicinity, things just fall off for the guy. So I think that's like, I love Devontae Adams, like I said, but we just can't. I hate drafting guys. Like, you remember everyone every single year drafting Odell Beckham? Like, it's just like, not that that's what's happening with Adams, because he had a productive year last year, even on a terrible team. But it's like, he's older on a bad football team that clearly is tanking. Like,
and Antonio Brown wasn't due to play because he was still playing pretty well. But when he like walked off the field, he was like 30, 31.
Yep.
So like,
yeah, it's just, it happens. So time to move on from Devontae Adams. We love you, buddy. Number 2 is Derrick Henry, the king.
Yep.
I've had an emotional roller coaster of takes on Derrick Henry, and it's hard because it's like going to Baltimore. Is sexy. That's like, it's like, oh my, finally he's on a team like they're gonna be in scoring opportunities a lot. It's one of the best offensive lines and teams he's been on. Like, he could be explosive as a running back.
Yeah.
But to me, like I said, this is like I always trend towards the future. And when you look at where Derrick Henry is going, he's going in the second round, right around the same vicinity as Devontae Adams. It's a lot of value to throw into Derrick Henry, not knowing what he's going to be. He's a 30-year-old running back. The age cliff for running backs is even younger. It's usually between 28 and 29. And when you hit the age of 30 and you switch football teams, that is always a massive indicator of a guy falling off a cliff. But it's Derrick Henry and the Ravens, so it's like, ooh, he's RB5 last year. It's just hard. But I've been trying to avoid him a little bit in drafts because of the sheer fact that for him it's once again that age cliff. And it's like, at some point it's going to hit, and I just don't necessarily want it. I don't want it to happen when he's on my team. So like Rick said a second ago, out a year early before a year late.
Yeah, and just I've kind of tried to do a little research of players that, running backs especially at the age of 30, that have had great seasons. It has happened before. Tiki Barber, I guess, had a monster year in his age 30 season. Priest Holmes had a good season, but we're going way back here. Mm-hmm. And I think Adrian Peterson had a good year later in his career, one of those years at the end. Yeah. But it's not a big list. It's a handful of guys in the last 25 years. Mm-hmm. So can it happen? Yes. Are you willing to bet on it? No. And even in my projections, I try to be pretty decent with Derrick Henry, give him a fair chance. And he ended up being my RB13, I think, RB12 or RB13.
Yeah.
Which is still not bad, but that's not a second. You're not taking that in the second round.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest problems with him is the receiving. I think he's not going to get a lot. He will get carries. He's going to get goal line carries, so he should get touchdowns. But he's kind of going to be a glorified Gus Edwards in a way, where he's going to get more carries and he'll probably be more efficient. But Gus Edwards had 12 rushing touchdowns a year or two ago, and he was running back 20.
Yeah.
He had 13 last year. He had 13 rushing touchdowns, and he was RB25. And I know Derrick Henry isn't Gus Edwards, and he'll be better than that. He'll get more yards. Mm-hmm. But the receiving game is just going to be not there. And in PPR leagues, that matters. Mm-hmm. So he's going to have one of his best seasons on the ground. He's going to have to be 2020 Derrick Henry, 2022 Derrick Henry, 2019 Derrick Henry in terms of his efficiency on the ground, which it is possible, but I'm just not willing to bet on it.
Yeah. And I did do some projections on him. I'm trying to find my sheet here. I did some projections on him earlier this week. And conservatively, because they rush so much, I have him at 270 rush attempts and 18 receptions. Those 288 touches. If he stays healthy, it's the fantasy production is definitely still there. But I have him at 211 fantasy points, which is
health is just I didn't even mention the health, but a 30-year-old running back getting that many
he's
touches?
never been hurt. So it's
well, he was hurt in 2021.
I don't want to say he's due, but
I think he sprained an ankle. He missed half the season in 2021.
Yeah.
But outside of that, he really hasn't been hurt. So
right.
It's another concern for an older running back.
Yeah, for Derrick Henry, just try to avoid him and stay away from him. If he becomes once again, we'll do this like we did with Adams. Where does he what round does he become draftable for you?
He's a little lower. But I think once you get past Pacheco, from me personally, running backs get really iffy, Rashid White, James Cook, Joe Mixon. I'd be willing to take him in that tier. But even then, wouldn't you rather take a flyer on a younger guy with pass catching? It's tough. But I would definitely consider him in that tier. But he's way too high to me in sleeper. He's currently pick 20. He would have to move down 15 and 20 spots for me to start considering him.
Okay. Let's talk about Brock Bowers. Not an old man.
No.
Not an old man. This one is a little bit more interesting.
Two Raiders on this list.
Because people love this guy. I was listening to a fantasy football podcast and draft him.
League winner, I've heard.
Yes. And what are we doing?
Sam Laporta, 2.0, I've heard.
Rick, a league winner on a bad football team. Last time I saw this was Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I would want to say he could be Sam Laporta, and then he's on the Raiders, so that kind of hurts. I like Brock Bowers.
Gardner Minshew. Hey, Rick, Gardner Minshew carrying a top 10 wide receiver, Devontae Adams, as well as a top 3 tight end, Brock Bowers.
It's not going to happen. He was the 13th overall pick.
Yeah,
he's got a lot of talent. I think he's going to be a really good fantasy asset for years to come. He's currently going as the 79th overall pick on Sleeper. He's a top 10 tight end. He's currently tight end, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's currently the tight end 9 on Sleeper. To me, this is the easiest guy on this list not to draft.
Yeah.
You have Adams there, who we just talked about. Jacoby Myers is going to demand a target share. They still have Michael Mayer, who they drafted in the second round last year, that they're going to use in situations. I do like how I've seen them potentially use Brock Bowers, where he's like in the backfield. He's lined up wide at receiver. Like, they're going to use him in all these fun different ways, and I like it for the future. But let's just relax in year one. I don't see him having a high production year. And I think people are kind of lost because they saw Laporta do it last year. But Laporta was on the Lions offense that was top 3 in the NFL. And the Raiders are going to be, a bottom 5, bottom 10 team. So it's very different situations. And I don't see Minshew, as you said, really producing 2 high-level fantasy assets in the receiving game.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Brock Bowers is just this has nothing to do with Bowers as a player. Like, next year, Raiders draft a quarterback, they start him. Like, Brock Bowers year 2, year 3, like, tight ends normally develop. Like, I'm on board. Like, I love Brock Bowers. I just think the outlier of last year is going to set up a lot of people to draft Brock Bowers high and think he's going to be good, like they did with Kyle Pitts with Sam Laporta. That's going to be the comp. Well, Sam Laporta was good year 1, and it's like, well, that's great, that's awesome, but like, Sam Laporta went to a football team that needed a tight end that traditionally targets tight ends quite a lot, and was on a football team that was winning. That is good. That scores touchdowns, guys.
Right.
Brock Bowers is on a football team that's not going to score. If Gardner Minshew leads that team to the playoffs, the kid deserves a key to the Las Vegas Strip. Because what are we doing? Like,
where would you draft Bowers?
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
So
how far would he have to fall?
I would say far. between rounds 10 and 15, I'd be okay. Like, I'd be like, I'll do it. I'll take the risk. Because
I have it in my projections, he was tight end 15. So that would put him in the 120 range.
But that's like
11th round.
It's like 3 4 full rounds. So I'm avoiding Brock Bowers not just at his ADP, but then you look at the history and the trends with rookie tight ends.
Adam 10 16 actually. It's even lower. But
like, Sam Laporta is so much of an outlier that if you just take Sam Laporta out, there has never been a tight end to finish in the top 5, the top 7 of fantasy football in the history of the NFL in fantasy.
Was Kyle Pitts tight end?
I don't know. I can't remember.
I think he was tight end 6 or 7 his rookie year.
Okay, yeah, but like, what is that in fantasy football? Like, what is the tight end 6?
Well, and it's also like Pitts that year had 1,000-yard receiving season as a rookie tight end.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if Brock Bowers has 1,000 yards this year.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, there you go. There's our hate on Brock Bowers for this year. There's people in the comments are going to lose it.
I know. It's not a knock on him. That's what we need to like. I think he's a good player. And in Dynasty, like 2 or 3 years from now, he might be a top 5 tight end.
Number 4 is the most dangerous one that we have on this list because it's most certain to burn us. But it's Mikey Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
He's been burning you especially.
Oh my
gosh.
Couple years. For a couple years.
Even me last year. I was very anti Mike Evans last year, and he was wide receiver 7.
He just keeps putting up 1,000-yard seasons, but Mike Evans is getting on the older side.
He's the same age as Devontae Adams, but he actually even has more on his tires than Devontae Adams. He's played more football in the NFL than Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy to think about because Adams
nuts.
is an old man.
Yeah. So, but Mike Evans, to me, I think at this point, this is another one that has to do with age, but it also has to do with, I don't really believe in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers all that much.
I agree. I think that we're going to see a step back.
We're going to see a big step back in their offense. We're going to see a big step back for the team. I don't think Mike Evans is going to keep that 1,000-yard streak going in his career, and I think it's a guy that I'm just staying away from. I'm not. Like, if he was a little bit later in drafts, like he's an old man that I might consider drafting, but I'm not on board with Mike Evans at his ADP, knowing his age, knowing that he's kind of similar to Adams where he's at the age cliff. He is a little bit better for ADP than Adams. Like, if you had to take Adams at his ADP or Mike Evans at his ADP, I would take Mike Evans at his ADP, but I think it's tougher for me to run out and say I want to draft Mike Evans, especially when there's other younger guys that I'm like, I believe in them, you know?
Yeah, and you've seen some of the early, like, I do think he has a good connection there with Baker, and I guess he's had pretty good camp with Baker.
Yep.
But again, with Evans, like, he's an old man receiver. The wall is coming.
Yep.
And I was actually going to be in on Evans, and then I saw his ADP, and I was like, oh, dang it. I wanted to try to be in on him. I just can't do it.
Yep.
I think wide receiver 14, which is where he's at on Sleeper, is just simply too high. I know he was wide receiver 7 last year. But he had 13 receiving touchdowns. Yeah. And I know he's done that in his career a couple times. Like, even with Brady, he had 13 and then 14. But this is Baker Mayfield. I don't see him getting 13 receiving touchdowns again next year. Chris Godwin only had 2. And I know Mike Evans is the red zone guy. So Mike Evans will have more touchdowns than Chris Godwin. He's had his whole career. That's how it works. But it's usually not a gap like this. Like, you look back a couple years ago, Evans was getting like 8 touchdowns, and Chris Godwin was getting like 6 and 7. So that gap, I don't know if it's going to be like that. I think Evans will probably still have like 3 or 4 more touchdowns than Godwin, but the gap is going to close, and that's going to move Evans back. Yeah, and that's assuming he also stays healthy again. Which I know it's hard to predict injuries, and you don't want to do it, and it's guys that have never really had injuries, but it's an age thing too. Like, it's easier to get injured when you're in your 30s. Like, that's just how it is.
Trust me, I know all about it.
So I agree with you. I'd rather take some younger guys. If he falls in draft, though, like you said, like, I agree with you. I think I'd rather take him at his ADP than Adams at his, but even, I don't know. It's kind of, I've been kind of avoiding both guys all off season. But for me, like, he would have to go in that Cup range. Like, it's like, okay, it's Cooper Kupp or Mike Evans. We can have a conversation about that. But all the receivers outside of maybe Diggs, because I'm not crazy about Diggs at his ADP either. But there's just probably like 5 or 6 receivers behind him that I think I'd rather draft.
So for the 5th guy, we were going to mention an honorable mention for a guy that is not really a bad selection, but we just haven't been kind of going after him. That would be Aaron Jones. So draft him as you will. Yeah. I think he could be okay.
He's a little early. And he potentially is not on a good team, so that's not. But I think, he's an old man running back.
I think he's
all 3 are not good combos, but I think he will be the workhorse there in Minnesota, and he might, if he has anything left in the tank, he should be okay.
He should be okay.
But we just don't love it.
James Conner is. I just don't see it. I don't see. It's not even just age. It's not ADP value. I just don't like. He's had some decent years for the Steelers and then the Cardinals, but I was looking at his numbers and it's funny because I was just looking at him and I was like, I didn't even anticipate having to be able to use them for the show, but here we are. Do you know that he's missed an average of 5 games?
Yeah,
per season, like 4 to 5 games per season. In
that alone just makes me not want to.
He has never played 14 games or more in an NFL season. Yeah. Like, that's insane. And for me, there's a young guy that they just drafted, Trey Benson, in the 4th round. And if James Conner, 3rd round, sorry.
Top of the first pick in the 3rd round.
If James Conner ends up getting hurt, inevitably, Trey Benson will come in, and that will be it for James Conner. And then you wasted an entire draft selection on a guy that's just not that. And even if he doesn't get hurt, I still think Trey Benson's going to take the job, and don't think James Conner is all that good to begin with. And this could be the hottest take in the history of society, and I could be wrong, but I'm so far away from James Conner. Like, I don't usually have this hard, fast, like, don't draft a player, but James Conner is one of those dudes, because people are going to go out and they're going to get preached by the fantasy community. Oh, well, James Conner could be okay, a good value at a low. No. Don't do that. There's other guys out there that you can draft that have more value. So go out and do those guys. I can't stand James Conner in drafts. People who draft him make my head explode.
I don't disagree with you. I think you feel stronger about it than I do, but I wouldn't draft James Conner. I think that injury thing alone is enough for me to say I'm out on him at ADP. If he stays healthy, like, I don't think he would be terrible, but Trey Benson looming doesn't help. So I think Connor's going to start off the year like he always does, which is pretty good.
Yep.
But then he's going to get hurt.
Tail off. Yeah.
And then it's going to be Trey Benson's job as long as he plays well from that point on. Mm-hmm. So, and we didn't even mention James Conner, 29-year-old running back, could be hitting a wall soon.
Yeah. Yep.
With his injury history as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't love it there either. It seems like to me you wouldn't draft him at all.
Nope.
But how far would he have to go for you to be okay with it?
12th, 13th round.
Holy cow! Yeah, so you're really out on
the tank on. I just don't want to waste a draft pick. Like I'm like,
that's fair,
because he's not even. I would say if he stays healthy and he's the starting quarterback for the whole season, the ADP that he has is not like brutal.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like
but that's the problem. Like, if he's healthy and remains the starting running back, mm-hmm. which are two question marks because those aren't guarantees.
Yeah.
Then he's just worth it at ADP.
Yep.
So you're assuming both those things happen.
Yeah, which is not. I mean, if Trey Benson's the worst thing in since sliced bread and James Conner has his there's so many scenarios that have to happen for Conner to be worth it. Like, it's just it's not worth it. Maybe 10th. Maybe I was a little bit strong, but like, okay. I don't want him on my team. I don't want to have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Because then what if he sucks? Then you have the name of James Conner, and it's like, do I drop him? Do I not drop him? Yeah. What if he does good? Like, and then you got a whole headache. And you know all about this because for the last 3 years in the home league, your team's been hurt. So,
yeah, for me especially. I think for me, it would take a couple round bump for me to draft him.
Okay. Like
Raheem Mostert's going 81. I don't like that.
Yeah.
But I think I would take, like, and even Javonte at 91. Like, mm-hmm. I would probably take. I'd rather Javonte than James Conner. Take a flyer on him.
Yeah.
But, Nick Chubb's going to 87, which to me is really high, but like he'd probably be in that range.
Okay.
Which is a full 2 to 3 rounds lower than what he's at right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. There you go. There's 5 players that you should just let your league mates draft and you should stay away from. Just let them draft those players and you'll be good. Devontae Adams, Derrick Henry, Brock Bowers, Mike Evans, James Conner. We do have 2 more episodes for you this week before we jump into next week. We'll talk to you later, guys. Bye.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.